Hello, hello. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. It's been a while since I've done a video. I was in some recovery, but we're getting back into it. And recently I had to do something that I very much dislike doing, and that is severing my contract with a client before I felt that the project was finished. I'm not going to go into any great details. This is not about spilling tea. There was a disagreement, and that contact was, well, that client was, shall we say, rude during that disagreement. Rudeness is one thing that I do not abide. As an independent editor, writing coach, and helper to the indie community in whatever capacity that I can be, there's a certain level of politeness that I expect. It's okay to be angry. It's not okay to be abusive to a person. You know, figure out a way to channel your anger in another way, or take some time to yourself before you engage in a conversation. And I tried my best to sort out the issue that the client had, but their increasing belligerence, especially while I was in the middle of doing a community service event leading up to the 4th of July, made me decide that I was no longer going to work with that particular client anymore. And the reason I bring this up is because it made me start thinking more and more about the costs of independent creation and production. I'm going to do a little bit of background here and explain something that many may not really think about, especially when they hire editors. That's specifically what I've been thinking about the most. If I'm hired as your editor, the only thing that I can do is advise you on a better way to shore up and revise and ultimately make your creation better, be it a comic book, be it a novel, even if it's a movie or a video. The only thing that I can do is go through the thing and then say, hey, this part here I think needs some work, and this is how I would approach it. But in the end, at the end of the day, it's ultimately up to the client whether or not they take that advice or if they ignore it and produce. So then the question becomes, well, what are you paying an editor for? You're paying an editor for their advisement. You're paying an editor to point out the things that are not working. You're paying an editor sometimes to fix those things themselves instead of for you. It depends on your contract with them. Now, generally speaking, most of my client contracts are from an advisement standpoint. I go over your draft and I point out what needs to be corrected. And if you choose to let me, I'll correct minor stuff, but I tend not to rewrite people's work, because then it's not them doing the work. They're not writing it in their own voice. It would be my voice. And I can try to emulate their voice as much as possible, but I generally prefer that any major developmental editing is done on a, hey, let's brainstorm how you can write this section better. But again, the question is, well, what are you paying for? And simply that. Now, as someone who provides services to the indie community, I come across this an awful lot, and some say, well, I don't need an editor, I can do it myself. That's your call. I don't recommend it. Even I, an editor for other people, have a separate human being that edits my books before I put them out. And just like with me, that editor advises me on what's best, and I say yes or no based on whether or not I see that advice as fruitful or not. Some readers will notice, yeah, I didn't think that part needed to be in there. And my editor advised me not to leave it in, but I decided it was important to the story, so I left it in. It is what it is. But when it comes to the overall costs of independent production, there are a couple of factors. A lot of indie creators want speed. They want to be able to produce quickly, which means they want a high return when it comes to, say, getting their edited draft back. I guarantee a 4 to 5 week turnover rate. Most editors I've ever met take 3 to 6 months. So if your turnover rate, if your desire is fast production, you're going to want to look for somebody who can do the editing fast. Sometimes those editors who do the work faster cost more money. So then it becomes a choice. Do I pay more for a quick turnover, or do I pay less and wait longer? It's really up to you. There's no right or wrong answer there. And the same thing with comic books when it comes to deadlines for art. You know, do you wait for the artist who's taking 6 months to produce your comic pages? Or do you hire somebody that'll get them done in 2 months? Do you pay more? Do you pay less? All of these factors are important parts of the production of independent projects. Now, unless you're doing the work yourself, like a good friend of mine, Jared, produced his film The Ballad of Missouri Breaks on a shoestring budget and practically did all of the background stuff himself. I say practically because I'm sure he had some help in some sections, but he put all of his free time into the back end of his film because it's the only way it would get out. Very similar to, you know, doing the editing work yourself. It's very similar to setting up your cover art. You know, maybe you're a physical artist and you're writing novels and you want to do your own covers. There's nothing wrong with that, and it saves you a little bit of money at the expense of your time. So there's always a cost in some direction, unless you're, you know, independently wealthy and just do this stuff by having everybody else do it, or you choose to have generative AI create stuff for you and, run your stuff through a matrix of Chat GPT, Grok, and whatever the heck else is out there. But we've seen how that goes. There's nothing particularly fantastic or unique about it. So, as always, there's a drawback. There's a cost, speed, quality, turnover rate, whatever you want to call it. Now, there's the crux of this video, I guess, even though I'm rambling a little bit. It's my first time back, so bear with me. The crux of this video and the way I've been thinking about it is I set up Whimsyland to help independent creators create quickly, efficiently, and at the lowest possible price point that would allow me to efficiently do the work on time with that 4 to 5 week turnaround without me losing money and having to, say, supplement by getting a job that would remove the free time to do so and not break people's banks. I know horror stories of folks talking about $3,000 to $6,000 editing services, or editors who run by word count at a penny and a half or 2 pennies or something. It's really retarded math. And I say that with intention, even though it might get me struck. It's retarded. We all know it is. And then they take 3 to 6 months to even do the work that you paid $3,000 to $6,000 for. There's a lot of 3s and 6s now that I'm thinking about it. Weird. Anyways, as an indie creator, you have to be intentional with everything, not just with the creation of the product itself, be it a comic book, a novel, what have you. You have to be intentional with your money. You have to be intentional with your time. Everything has to have a purpose and be as economical as possible, especially right now with the way that our, economies in our various countries are kind of playing out. Make your money move as far as you possibly can to move it. And that really is the point of my little video here, which I'm going to wrap up so I don't keep rambling. Be intentional. But in order to be intentional, you're going to have to spend your time. So there's always going to be cost. When I post these videos, if you have a comment, you have a thought, you have an idea, feel free to drop it, and I'll respond when I get an opportunity. But I'm going to go dive back into a client project and continue working on my day. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.